Microsoft's Generative Pages look like the final glorious victory for low-code, the moment the spreadsheet crowd finally caught up to the coders. You type a sentence, press enter, and GPT-5 obediently assembles a working React page that talks to Dataverse, decorates itself with orange flair, and politely runs on first try. Cue applause, confetti, and a brief illusion that we've transcended the need for developers entirely. Yes, it looks effortless. A user describes a dashboard, and within seconds the app agent conjures data grids, filters, even export buttons. Text becomes React, and because it's built right inside Power Apps, it feels safe, regulated, sandboxed, like the rest of the platform. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. That tidy UI hides the quiet click of a lock disengaging, the magical instant when you whisper edit code, and the platform hands you the keys plus the entire mortgage. Each regenerated line of JSX isn't a convenience. It's a liability you now own. A Trojan horse dressed in productivity, wheeled straight past governance and security review. The promise is autonomy. The price is maintenance. You didn't hire a developer, you became one, minus the salary and version control habits. Here's the absurd part. Someone decided that giving citizen makers direct React access was empowerment. Apparently, years of runaway Excel macros and untested PowerFX formulas didn't teach us enough humility. So Microsoft wrapped this chaos in pastel branding, stamped it generative AI, and declared it progress. Generative Pages whisper, don't worry, the agent will handle it. It won't. The agent writes convincing React, not sustainable architecture. Every tweak creates divergence from the low-code core, the same core that once safeguarded you from dependency hell, NPM drift, and patch roulette. You think you got a shortcut. What you actually got was responsibility. The promise and the pivot. Officially, Microsoft calls this a bridge, a seamless link between low-code convenience and pro-code flexibility. In theory, GPT-5 inside Power Apps is the final layer of the stack that lets business users dream in sentences instead of scripting languages. Type, build a page that lists internal users with filters, and a capable AI architect assembles the page automatically. Files materialize, components wire themselves up, and the illusion of mastery begins. But here's where the bridge analogy collapses. This isn't a bridge. It's an autopilot that starts rewiring the airplane mid-flight. You may believe you're cruising comfortably between low-code and custom dev. In fact, the AI quietly tears down the cockpit controls and sells you a soldering iron. The intent is noble. Microsoft's ecosystem has always danced between citizen makers and professional devs. The company wants both populations to coexist, sharing Dataverse tables and governance policies. Generative AI, they argue, finally levels that divide, because now anyone can issue natural language commands and get production-ready code. Except production-ready implies someone somewhere will maintain it. And that's the catch. Low-code worked because it was declarative, rules, configurations, and formulas that Microsoft's engine could interpret, validate, and patch safely. Type a formula wrong and you got a friendly error toast. Edit React, you get lint errors, broken imports, and a vacation into Stack Overflow threads last updated in 2019. This is the moment the promise pivots. The interface still looks like Power Apps, but the guts have left the building. Once that edit code button is pressed, your app is no longer a managed configuration. It's source code. The platform stops enforcing its clean boundaries. Identity, data access, control logic, styling all become mutable text. Text you now have to secure, diff, and patch yourself. Think of Power Apps as a managed city. Roads are paved, lights synchronized, sanitation handled nightly. Everyone builds within zoning laws, so nothing collapses. Now picture Generative Pages granting zoning exemptions. Suddenly, backyard skyscrapers sprout beside single-story homes, power cables cross sidewalks, and no one's sure who maintains the plumbing. It's freedom, yes, but freedom that invites entropy. The cognitive dissonance is spectacular. Marketing says anyone can build. Reality says anyone can break and few can fix. This gap between illusion and responsibility is where technical debt breeds. Users who thought they'd delegate complexity to AI discover they've merely delayed it to next quarter's outage. Let's dwell on that anyone can maintain myth. A low-code page describes what to show. A React component prescribes how to show it. That how carries dependencies, state management, async behavior, data calls, each potential point of failure. A citizen dev might know Dataverse schemas, but not the difference between a promise chain and an async await. GPT-5 can generate them both, but it won't explain why one leaks memory under load. Developers see this and laugh, convinced the feature finally elevates them. Now we can extend Power Apps freely, they cheer, forgetting that freedom without guardrails produces the same technical debt they already drown in every sprint. Ironically, Microsoft's attempt to merge low-code safety with pro-code control just hands every participant the other camp's problems. And that tiny edit button, that's where everything unravels. The break. Why pro-code is a debt. The moment you click edit code, Power Apps stops being your babysitter. That comforting declarative shield, the one that prevented you from doing anything catastrophic, is gone. You now inhabit pure React land where one misplaced bracket can unravel an entire interface. Beneath the aesthetic continuity, the architecture has switched species. Declarative became imperative, governed became freelance, predictable became good luck. Technically, what happens is simple but devastating. A generative page starts as metadata. Microsoft's engine compiles it into components that follow the Power Apps runtime. Once you open the code panel, the system snapshots that Pages generated React, wraps it in a thin integration layer, and tells the platform, this file is externally managed. Translation, Microsoft stops maintaining it, the safety net doesn't tear, it's intentionally removed. From here on, the dependencies, libraries, and JSX logic are yours to shepherd. Security updates, your problem. Dependency mismatches, also yours. When Dataverse modifies an endpoint signature, your ungoverned code doesn't refactor itself. It just breaks quietly at 3 a.m. on a Sunday. Right after you told leadership the app was self-maintaining. In the original low-code world, the Power Apps compiler interpreted formulas. It safeguarded them with type validation, permissions, and centralized patching. You couldn't import a vulnerable library because everything lived inside Microsoft's fenced ecosystem. React editing dismantles that fence. Want Material UI? Fine. It'll import straight from NPM. Want to inject a date library, chart component, or custom avatar renderer? Go ahead. Each new dependency is a potential malware injection vector with the full privileges of your data connection. Essentially, the Power Platform was a carefully managed city grid. Every building, page, flow, table, built under strict architectural codes. Sewers connect, traffic lights synchronize, and every upgrade rolls out citywide. Hitting edit code converts your plot of land into an unlicensed construction site. You can now extend, patch, or repaint your property freely. But when the sewage backs up through your basement, City Hall won't help. Let's visualize the debt that bloats quietly after that. First comes the React version drift. Power Apps might upgrade its rendering engine to a new React release. Your component still targets the old one. Hooks deprecate, lifecycle methods change, and suddenly, it worked yesterday becomes your daily lament. Then come NPM dependencies, each with its own patch cycle, security advisories, and breaking change schedule. Unless you're actively reading CVE reports, a pastime no business analyst requested, you're walking blindfolded through a minefield of vulnerabilities. Consider Dataverse schema evolution. Someone in IT renames a column or alters a relationship. In classic low-code mode, the runtime adjusts automatically. The next publish rebinds controls to the updated schema. But your custom React page doesn't know about those updates. It still queries the old field name, fails silently, and serves empty grids while end users file help desk tickets. Then there's authentication drift. Managed Power Apps enforce Microsoft Entra permissions automatically. Custom React components live outside that enforcement boundary. Forget a permission check, and your page might happily render sensitive user data to anyone with the link. You didn't merely break functionality, you violated compliance. Yet the makers remain blissfully convinced the AI will patch things later. Oh, I'll just tell the agent to fix it, they say, as though GPT were a dependable colleague instead of a stochastic parrot with attention issues. Generative AI can rewrite broken code? Yes, it cannot understand why it broke. Each regeneration piles abstraction upon abstraction until your app resembles a tower built by well-intentioned interns on Red Bull, impressive from afar, unstable up close. Here's the quiet irony. Professional developers already fight this debt in traditional projects. They use CI/CD pipelines, linters, dependency scanners, and version logs to contain it. Citizen developers, those new recruits in productivity, rarely have such discipline. When granted full React powers, they create the same debt patterns but without the guardrails. And when the inevitable failure arrives, IT inherits the mess, discovering code written half by humans, half by AI, and wholly by negligence. So yes, pro code offers control, but control without governance becomes chaos with a keyboard. The technical debt isn't hypothetical. It's encoded in the moment responsibility shifts from platform to person. Every security patch skipped, every dependency left unpinned, every minor API change untested, all accrue interest. The cost isn't just rework hours, it's exposure surface. Let's follow one practical chain reaction. The maker adds an import from Material UI to display avatars. Harmless. 6 months later, Material UI releases a patch for a cross-site scripting exploit. Power Apps can't apply it because it's not part of their managed runtime. Your app remains vulnerable until someone remembers which app even included that library. Multiply that across dozens of pages and congratulations, you federated security through ignorance. Meanwhile, AI complacency grows. Makers train themselves to rely on prompts rather than comprehension. They stop reading the generated code, assuming anything produced by Microsoft's agent must meet Microsoft's standards. It doesn't. The agent speaks React fluently, but has no notion of corporate security baselines. It will happily import outdated packages if they satisfy your vague request for nicer buttons. And here's the checkmate. Once a page enters code-edited status, reverting it to pure low-code is effectively impossible. The generator won't safely reabsorb your modifications. At best, it overwrites them. At worst, it merges nonsense. You can't undo pro-code it. It's a one-way migration from platform-governed safety into self-managed fragility. Sarcastically speaking, congratulations. You just became a front-end developer without consent. You didn't sign up for NPM audits, regression tests, or dependency chains, yet here you are managing them by accident. You traded Microsoft's safety net for autonomy you can't afford, believing AI would subsidize competence. Spoiler, it doesn't. It's not if this breaks, it's which part breaks first is the proof of collapse. What breaks first? Microsoft already knows this is unstable. That's why the new Code Compare tool exists. It's not innovation, it's insurance. Code Compare lets you view the before and after of your edits, an admission that contradictory code states are now expected. In the low-code world, version control was implicit. The platform tracked everything. Now, with Code Compare, Microsoft politely hands you Git without the GitHub, a babysitting feature disguised as empowerment. Consider what it reveals. As soon as Code Compare appears, you're no longer using low-code, you're debugging. You can literally watch the AI regenerate React after your edits, splicing its code suggestions beside yours. It's the visual manifestation of technical debt, a diff where half the lines are human, half are GPT, and none are documented. That's not a workflow, that's forensic work. The supposed flexibility of external imports makes this worse. The moment you bring in something like Material UI, you've stepped outside Power App's walled garden. Inside, controls are vetted, sandboxed, updated alongside Dataverse. Outside, you're trusting strangers on NPM to behave. The import line looks innocent. Import avatar from @myMaterial avatar. But behind that cute syntax lurk megabytes of unreviewed dependencies with their own transitive chains and potential exploits. One styling component pulls 10 sub-packages, each pulling 2 more. You now have a dependency tree tall enough to shade your compliance officer. And here comes the security bombshell. Those libraries don't live in isolation. They run with the same privileges as the page, meaning they handle the same enterprise data. You just gave unaudited open source JavaScript access to your company's internal directory. Calling that citizen development is like letting strangers run electrical wiring in your office because they watched one tutorial. It's not merely theory. Style tweaks ripple unpredictably. One user changes a table header color, React recompiles entire component trees. Because your modified page diverged from Microsoft's templates, automated patching no longer applies cleanly. The next time Power Apps updates its rendering engine, your styled grid becomes a Picasso composition. Columns evaporate, filters misbehave, and hovering over a label triggers existential dread. Then comes the double generation problem. Users assume GPT-5 will respect their manual code tweaks when regenerating. It doesn't. The agent rewrites with cheerful indifference, overwriting some variables, leaving others producing Franken-code that half works. The brand new Code Compare view becomes a morgue report. Red and green lines chronicling the slow decomposition of once stable behavior. AI and human fight silently over control of the same file, each confident it knows best. Imagine a simple change, adding a filter to show only enabled users. AI does its rewrite, preserving earlier modifications when possible. And somewhere in that vague phrase lies disaster. Perhaps you renamed a constant or wrapped logic in a new hook. GPT doesn't parse intent, it pattern matches strings. The outcome is familiar: invisible breakage, visible embarrassment. A weekday merges into a lost weekend of debugging conversationally generated nonsense. Dataverse adds its own sabotage via schema drift. Tables evolve, columns renamed, relationships restructured. Low-code handled those changes automatically. Your detached React page doesn't know this evolution happened. It still calls user email, but the field became primary email. The result? Empty grids, silent errors, chaos disguised as functionality. And because the bug isn't syntax level, nothing crashes. The page just lies convincingly. Upgrading Power Apps once meant excitement. Now it's Russian roulette. Each new release could obsolete one of your imports or break a binding that AI invented months ago. The only way to test safety is to open Code Compare and pray there's nothing red. Some organizations already lock environments to frozen versions, trading progress for survival. Congratulations, you've recreated legacy SharePoint customization but shinier. Here's where the humor curdles. Microsoft built Generative Pages to accelerate development but quietly equipped Power Apps with code forensics instead of new features. That's not confidence, that's crisis management. When a platform invents tools for diffing your creative freedom, it's admitting loss of control. Even styling choices become volatility engines. Remember that lighter orange grid stripe? Each color hex you replace can trigger cascading diffs through CSS and JS bindings. One user's vanity change becomes another's runtime error. The new orange theme might compile locally, but fail in production because the updated Material UI theme no longer exposes that variable. This isn't creative expression, it's artisanal chaos at scale. And let's not ignore patch roulette. The moment a Dataverse or Entra update collides with your ungoverned logic, role-based access changed slightly, your hard-coded condition still assumes the old object path. Now half your users can't load the page, and the other half can see everyone's data. Fixing it requires poring over AI-generated conditionals that nobody wrote intentionally. Collectively, these failures reveal the fundamental truth. The low-code safety net isn't broken, it's gone. The guarded runtime that once insulated you from open-source entropy has been replaced with privilege escalation on demand. You used to build within a secure toy box, now you've been handed a chainsaw with a smiley sticker. At this point, prevention is fantasy. The architecture encourages divergence faster than governance can respond. Microsoft's patching schedule can't account for thousands of citizen-altered React branches, each mutating independently like digital species. The code compare feature isn't a safeguard, it's an archaeological tool for future incident response. So the next time an enthusiastic manager asks if generative pages empower the business, answer carefully. Yes, they empower it to inherit unbounded liability. The glamour of AI-coded freedom conceals a maintenance nightmare where every grid, color, and import might detonate tomorrow. At this point, prevention isn't possible. Only containment remains. Containing the chaos, governance in a post-low-code world. Let's be pragmatic. The horse has left the stable, burnt the barn, and is currently generating JSX in your production environment. Rolling back generative pages isn't an option. Managing their fallout is. Microsoft won't revoke the feature. It's too shiny for marketing to surrender, so governance must adapt from prevent to contain. The new discipline isn't about stopping chaos, it's about quarantining it. Containment starts with 3 rules: isolate, review, restrict. Think of them as biohazard procedures for code exposure. Rule 1, isolate and elevate. The moment a maker clicks edit code, that app ceases to be a low-code artifact. It's now a software project and must live in a developer environment with proper lifecycle management. You wouldn't store a radioactive isotope in the break room. Don't let edited React pages sit in the same tenant as citizen apps. Move them to a pro-dev workspace where visual designers fear to tread, attach version control, and track dependencies like adults. Low-code governance tools can't validate dependencies or run unit tests, but DevOps pipelines can. Elevating contaminated apps isn't punishment, it's cleanup. Rule 2, review gate. Every modified page, whether changed by a human or the AI agent, needs continuous inspection. Establish an approval gate that mimics enterprise CI/CD. Run ESLint, dependency scanners, and static code analyzers before republishing. If that sounds excessive for citizen development, good. That means you remember what discipline looks like. Microsoft's own update cadence will collide with your code eventually. Linting infrastructure gives you a fighting chance to notice before users do. Remember, diff everything. Compare not just for syntax, but for intent. An unreviewed AI patch is indistinguishable from a supply chain exploit. Rule 3, one-way door policy. Once code is edited, it never returns to the garden. No regenerating it back into declarative metadata. No, just undoing the pro-code status. Lock the file and tag it as independently maintained. This establishes accountability. When it breaks, and it will, you'll already know who owns the problem. It's the digital equivalent of labeling your lunch in the office fridge to avoid mysterious disappearances. These 3 rules don't restore purity, but they define boundaries in a hybrid ecosystem that's lost them. Treat every generative page as a separate species requiring controlled habitat. Pro-dev environments become fenced preserves where mutated apps can evolve without infecting your stable population of classic power apps. It's evolutionary containment via environment segmentation, a concept familiar to anyone managing cloud tenants or, frankly, zoo exhibits. Now to the cultural problem. Business users still believe code editing equals empowerment. Disabuse them gently but firmly. Governance is maturity, not micromanagement. Enforcing reviews and segregating edited apps doesn't cage creativity, it saves continuity. The irony of low-code's evolution is that it brings enterprises full circle back to software engineering fundamentals they once escaped. Version control, least privilege code review, old rituals reborn under pastel UX. And remember the sarcasm baked into this transformation. You clicked edit code? Congratulations, you own it now. Ownership means maintenance, monitoring, patching, documentation, the boring work necessary to keep lights on. Pretending otherwise just ensures overtime later. What once felt like spontaneous automation now demands structured operations. That's not failure, that's recognition of scale. Still, this shift is worth something valuable. When governance catches up, organizations gain a bifurcated ecosystem that reflects reality instead of fantasy. The low-code side delivers agility for safe configurations. The pro-code branch, fenced and audited, handles customization beyond Microsoft's reach. The chaos becomes predictable, the liabilities mapped. That's the maturity arc of all technology. Exuberant adoption, painful consequences, then principled governance. Power Apps isn't dying, it's being reclassified. What was once no code now spans from descriptive to imperative, from playground to factory floor. Enterprises that adapt policy faster than makers break features will survive this generative adolescence with minimal scarring. Those who don't will discover what technical debt feels like when multiplied by AI enthusiasm, because this isn't the death of Power Apps, it's its reclassification. The reality Microsoft created. Generative Pages didn't enhance Power Apps, They dismantled its illusion of safety. By bridging low-code and pro-code, Microsoft accidentally vaporized the border that kept novice makers from detonating production environments. The result is a platform where every prompt can generate beauty or liability at scale. The grand moral: power without governance breeds breakage. Microsoft democratized innovation, yes, but it also democratized the blast radius. Click, edit code, and you inherit the complexity entire teams once handled. Low-code wasn't built to carry that weight, yet now every user drags it behind their prompts like a forgotten anchor. So treat every new feature less like magic and more like chemistry, powerful, volatile, requiring goggles. Adopt containment policies, automate reviews, label ownership, or prepare for the next AI-written patch to helpfully rewrite your security posture, or worse, your job description. If this clarified the mess, repay the sanity, subscribe. Turn on notifications before GPT-6 releases and starts generating governance policies on your behalf. Better to learn them here first, voluntarily.